if you are wholeheartedly committed to the Lord, regardless of where you've come from, regardless of your heritage or lack of it, God is going to bless your life. When a person looks to God with all of their heart, God will move heaven and earth to work in their life. What a powerful thought. Let me give you just a couple of hallmarks of the person who is wholehearted in their commitment to the Lord. First of all, they have a full-on confidence in God. They're just very confident. 45 years before the verses we're reading in Joshua chapter 14, as I said, Moses sends spies into the land to look at it, 12 leaders from Israel. Their job wasn't to determine if Israel could conquer the land. That had already been decided by God. But look at it in Numbers 13 and verse 27. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit, but the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. And we even saw descendants of Anak there, and Anak was a giant. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. So in other words, they're saying, for all these reasons, it's impossible for us to conquer the land. And look what then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. How does he have that kind of confidence in God? Because he's wholeheartedly committed to the Lord. When you're wholeheartedly committed to the Lord, you just simply believe what God says. Yeah. You have confidence that if God said it, that's what's going to happen. Caleb's a man who has confidence in the promises of God and in the power of God to deliver on those promises. He's confident God will do what he said he would do. When you're wholeheartedly committed to the Lord, faith comes much easier. It's much easier to believe God when you're fully committed. But if you're not fully committed, then you're struggling with a lot of the self-doubt that comes into a person's life because they're reminded by the enemy or their own conscience of the times, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you should have done that. Why would God listen to you now? Well, you didn't hear from God over there. So, and you're so busy battling thoughts within your mind or the enemy as he's attacking you that you can't think clearly regarding God's will, God's plan, God's purpose, God's direction. When a person's fully devoted to the Lord, it alleviates a lot of self-doubt. I want to ask you a question in regard to your situation. What do you believe God can do in your situation? All things. Either way, you're right. If you're like, well, I think he could, but I don't know. It's going to be difficult to receive anything from the Lord. The wholehearted person has a huge advantage when it comes to walking by faith. Second, a wholehearted person not only has a full-on confidence in God, they have a full-on commitment to God. Let's look at it in Joshua chapter 14. I'm going to read several verses here. This is Caleb. 45 years have passed since he spied out the land. He says, I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land. And I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my brothers who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt with fear. Would you notice, what are his convictions? He's wholeheartedly committed to the Lord. Yeah. His conviction is, listen, God's going to help us. The wholehearted person really sees more clearly when it comes to the spiritual things in life. The wholehearted person believes more readily the promises of God when it comes to the circumstances of life. Here's Caleb, And he says, I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. I mean, he sees what he saw, and the way he processed it flowed out of a wholehearted commitment to the Lord. So on that day, Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance and that of your children forever. Why? Because you have followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Listen, what we can simplify our following of God if we just simply say, let's be full on for God. Yeah. And when you're full on for God, it resolves a ton of problems. A lot of the struggles that people have is because their heart's divided. A lot of the struggles people have is because they're not fully devoted, they're not fully committed. They keep a little back for themselves. Either because they're afraid of what someone will think, or they're afraid of what someone will do, or because they don't want to give up some certain aspect of their life. They're afraid it will be too restrictive, that somehow their life will be less if they're fully committed to the Lord. Look at this. Because you followed the Lord, my God, wholeheartedly, his descendants are going to be blessed forever. And it says, now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for 45 years since the time he said this to Moses while Israel moved about in the desert. So here I am today, 85 years old. And I'm still as strong today as the day Moses sent me out. I'm just as vigorous to go out to do battle now as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there, the giants were there, and that their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said. Here's what Caleb says. Listen, you know what? A wholehearted person is not afraid of challenge. A wholehearted person isn't afraid of obstacles. A wholehearted person says, you know what? Give me the hardest assignment. I can do it because it's not me, it's God. And the God who is gone before me in the past is the God who's going to go before me now. That's Caleb. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. So Hebron has belonged to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, ever since, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. Moses told Caleb he'd have an inheritance that few others would have. Why? One reason. Not because his name was Caleb, not because he was from the tribe of Judah or a leader there, but because he was wholehearted. I want to ask you, are there areas in your life where you would say, you know what? I need to let go of some things. I need to do some things different. When you're wholly committed to the Lord, he not only wins all ties, but he is the desire of your heart. He's the joy of your life. Loving him, serving him, listening to him, following him is what your life centers on. And when you live life like that, God does supernatural things in your life. God gives you an inheritance. God conquers land for you. God brings giants down. Walls fall down. In 2 Chronicles chapter 16 and verse 9, I quote this verse all the time because it's just so true. And it's true tonight. The eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. God's looking like this. Where are the people who are fully committed to me? I'm going to help them. I'm gonna work in their life in power. Listen, settle it in your heart. God wants to do amazing things in your life. Settle it in your heart. God wants to show himself powerful. But in a lot of ways, we see God work as much as we want, because what happens, what determines what God's gonna do in many circumstances is how willing we are to give ourselves to him. And the more we give to him, and the more we serve him without reservation, without hesitation, the more we'll see him do in our life.